I'm so sweaty right now. It's hard. There's tons of bugs. They all want to eat your plants. It's gonna be okay. Just keep restarting. Howdy neighbor, how is your garden growing? Right now, I am doing so much seed starting in preparation for my fall vegetable garden, my winter vegetable garden, and maybe even a little bit of my spring vegetable garden. But as I was prepping, I started to think about all the things I've gotten wrong through the years. So I figured today I could take you through some of the things that I've done wrong so that you can avoid these mistakes when doing your own seed starting. And they're not inherently wrong because you definitely can start seeds doing some of these techniques, but it definitely makes your life a lot harder. And we're all about making our lives a little bit easier, a little bit more efficient, and yeah, not wasting a bunch of time and money. So today I'm gonna take you through at least 7 things you can avoid when starting your seeds for your fall vegetable garden. So here is your mistake number 1 to avoid, and it is, what soil should you start your seed in? And the answer should be so obvious, and you should use seed starting mix. But for me, I'm a big, whatever you have on hand, just go ahead and use it. Also, I don't think in the beginning I ever realized there was a thing called seed starting mix. So I just always use things like potting mix and in-ground mix. And the reason, because I had it. It was there. Like, why else? And I am a big believer in using stuff that you already have. I'm very much a waste not, want not kind of person. And the thing is you can start seeds in potting mix and in-ground mix. You just won't get as many baby plants popping up. And the reason is because there's big chunky pieces of wood in in-ground mix and potting mix. Hang on, let me show you. See, you got like these big, I'm making a mess. You got these big pieces of wood in your potting mix, and it's like a good amount of it. So what ends up happening is your little itty bitty baby tiny seeds try to push up, but one of these pieces of mulch end up just blocking them, and then they just go like, blah. But it doesn't mean you can't use this. If you do have this on hand, bigger seeds like things like pumpkins and beans often can shove these out of the way, but things like your onions and like your tomatoes and your peppers, they're not as big of fans of trying to shove this out of the way. Now, if you did want to use your potting mix or in-ground mix, you could run this through like a colander or a sifter just to get all these big funky chunks out, because that's basically that's the difference between these in general, is that this seed starting mix has already been the big stuff's out there. There's still a couple pieces of mulch in it that I would say are on the smaller side, but generally it's just such a small amount of it. And other things that if you have an in-ground mix is it doesn't have things like this perlite in it. So it doesn't, the perlite's really there just to help hold water for the seeds. So again, you can get away with it if you have a bunch of this on hand. There's ways to use it for starting seeds. But if you want to make your life a lot easier and just go the distance of making sure you have generally more successful seeds, get yourself a seed starting mix. And when we look at the difference in pricing, this bag's gonna be about $7 and this bag's $6. You may say, but Jacqueline, there's so much less. Facts. I'm gonna go do something with this dirt, hold on. But the thing is that if you have more successful starts, you're saving a lot of money so that you don't have to buy starts, which can range, well, it depends on the time of year, but in fall, you're really looking at a lot of starts that are $6 up to $10 for kind of some of your basic plants. So it may be worth just to spend a little bit more money, getting 2 bags of these, depending on how much you're gonna go do, so that you save lots and lots of money on starts later on. If you're a beginner, I would just start simple, go to your Home Depot, your Lowe's, your Common Garden Center, just buy whatever brand, don't overthink it. And yes, I did stage these on the top of my couch just for you, so you could see it. All right, mistake number 2 to avoid. For years, I have just taken that bag of soil, no matter what type it is, and just dumped it straight into my tray. But the thing is that when you first get these bags of soil, it's so dry. And this makes sense because if it wasn't so dry, you would have mold growing in this bag. So what you have to do is you have to get moisture back into it. If you don't get moisture, AKA water, into your soil before planting seeds, which I have done before, what ends up happening is the soil moves all over the place and your seed goes diving down into there. So even though you've put the right depth, especially little seeds. Your seed often will get washed way down into this soil because the soil is lighter than that seed at that time. It's like a big bummer because you're sitting here like for weeks waiting for something to come up and then nothing comes up. And that's really like all of a sudden you're just like, oh my gosh, I started planting and I was gonna be early, but nothing came up. And now it's been a month and I didn't know if my seeds just were slow or they're ineffective. But really it all had to do with the fact that you didn't get the soil wet before you planted into it. So what I do now is I take one of my handy dandy 5-gallon buckets. These aren't fancy. They're just literally like, let's do this. And I dump my seed starting mix in here. Actually, what I do first is I dump some water in here, and I'm not really precious about this. Like I just literally put a few inches of water. Then I dump a whole bag of seed starting mix in there, and then I add water back on top. And then I mix and I mix and I mix and I mix until it's like this nice cakey structure. Kind of reminds me of cake. Hold on, let me grab some. It's kind of like this. It holds itself together. If you squeeze it, like a little bit of water comes out, but it's not like dusty looking. That helps. Kind of looks like a brownie. I would say that like brownie texture. If you can see brownie, that's kind of like, boom. That's what you're looking for. And a trick for those of you who are busy and are like, oh, I don't know how I feel about all this. Like put water in the night before, throw the seed mix in, add a little bit, mix it. If you're like, I don't know if I should add more or less, leave it overnight. Leave it overnight. And then in the morning when you go and like mix around, if you're like, oh, it looks a little dry or it looks a little soggy, it's okay if it's a little on the soggy side. There's ways to work around it. But that's like an easy way to just like not be fussing with it. And you'll know that your soil's like really got the moisture in, because that stuff's like really dry. Like I feel like when I touch it, all of a sudden like the moisture's sucking out of my skin. That's how dry it feels. And yes, we live in like a humid environment, so like that shouldn't even be a thing. Okay, so now you've got like this really good soil that's all mixed up. And so you're just gonna like, boom, put it in a thing, fill it up to the top, yay. And then we get to the next thing that I screwed up so many times. So many times. And that is putting your seeds at the right depth. Because on the packets, it gives you the information. It's not like this is a secret or hard to understand. Like it says for these tomato seeds, like put them 1/4 inch deep. And what I kept doing is, well, I'm an engineer. And so I'm like, okay, 1/4 inch. And I honestly feel like every time I do it, what depth I think, I do it the depth that they say, it's deeper than it should be. Because I'm like sitting here going around being like 1/4 inch, 1/4 inch. Because like if you honestly think about it, quick rule of thumb is this is about 1 inch. This is about 1/2 inch. This is about 1/4 inch. So like between my nails that deep, that's way deeper, I feel, than most tomato seeds actually do. So for me, I would put them 1/4 inch deep and then a lot wouldn't come up. Now, remember, I was making so many mistakes. So many, like so many throughout the years. So there's a myriad of reasons why seeds weren't starting. But these little seeds, like oftentimes, like I was like, cool, I'll put them like 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch deep. Shocker, they didn't come up. Because these seeds are like really tiny, especially anything that's like 1/4 inch deep. Gosh, if it says 1/8 inch deep, just like, so I was putting these little baby seeds. And I mean, you think about tomato plants, and especially like this variety is decently big. So right, we're talking about a tomato that's gonna be about that big later on. So you're like, yeah, sure, like I'm gonna put it, you know, it can bust through the soil. But like, let's be real, like this is the seed. This is like a ridiculously small seed. So like so what I had to learn is basically however big the seed is, like that's about as deep as you get. And honestly, that is a very, 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 very tiny seed. Because out in like nature and in the wild, like they just like plop on the ground and then like whatever fruit they come out of, whether it's a tomato or a pepper, like they're just like not gonna break through all this stuff. So when we put like a ton of soil on top, like they're not popping up through it. Because if you think about like, if you've ever seen like tomato seedlings, like they're very like delicate. And so they can't push through a lot of stuff. So what I have often found, if I'm not sure or I'm like not feeling confident or it's a new thing, I'll even go a little bit less than whatever I think or whatever the packet says, because it's always easier to add soil on than it is to take it away. Because taking it away, the plant's probably already like tried to pop up and through and died. And it's always easier to be like, oh, it popped up. I can see like some white part to it. Like I can just sprinkle a little bit more soil around it and then just like keep it going instead of it just never comes up and I've wasted a bunch of time. Because that was a thing that was really, really hard, is that A lot of these things, if you get it wrong, like you're not gonna know right away. It's gonna go weeks. Because I feel like all these little rinky dinky seeds, they're always the ones that are like 7 days, 14 days before they actually even pop up, versus like your beans and your like pumpkins are like, oh, 7 days, bam, here we are. So you know pretty quickly whether you screwed it up or not, or if you got bad seeds or whatever. So what the big thing is I would say go a little bit less than you think. Just go less than you think. And let the seed size guide you with how deep. If you're going deeper than the seed is tall, too much. Backfill it in. It's all good. All right, the next mistake to avoid, once you get all your like beautiful seeds, it's all full and you've got them in the ground, you're feeling really proud of yourself, you need to water them. And you need to water them regularly. It's like hot and humid here, but you need to keep the soil moist. Because what the soil is doing is like the moisture is helping break down like the hard coating of the seed. So yeah, but one of the mistakes, oh my gosh, so bad, is I had this watering can that just kind of like, imagine water coming out of your sink. It was like that. It used to have one of those like covers to kind of disperse it so it's more rainfallish, but no. So I just like the whole thing, and you would just see these big like gouges in the soil. This doesn't work very well for seedlings, no, because honestly, you're just smashing them. So even if that tiny little delicate plant was starting to pop through, not anymore, because you just smashed it with this big, heavy watering system. This is why over the years, I had way more success with in-ground, because if I have to fuss at a plant, I tend to be like, let's do this as fast as possible. I cannot give you gentle rain. I'm going to give you a lot of water really fast, which is a terrible idea. Little seedlings are not big fans of this. They're like little itty bitty baby plants, which I've realized through the years. But at the time, I had too much work, no time. And I was just like, I need to get this done. It's the watering can I have. You can see that there's like a theme here of just like working with what I got, which you should, but sometimes those are bad choices. Like a gentle spring rain, which we don't have here in Florida. But imagine you lived up north where they had like just gentle watering misting of your plants. You want it to look a lot more like this. See how gentle that looks? Oh, wow. Can't you imagine all the birds and the bees and the, I don't know, it's like Bambi's running around. That's what you want. So what it does is it allows for soil to stay in place and it doesn't knock everything around. And if you have a little seedling that's coming up, well, it's okay, because this is not gonna beat your plant to death. So you just want something gentle. This is just like, I don't know, I'll put a link to something similar or this one online if you want to get this exact watering can, but there's a lot of brands that work. This is not brand specific. You just want it to flow like this, nice and gentle. And what's nice about this one is it can come off, so you can do like a high dousing of water, but it also gives you this very gentle. Man, I have messed up so many seedlings through the years. Oh yes, and this brings us to the next point. You need to water longer than you think. I dealt with this more from my mom when I was doing some stuff with her than actually doing this myself, because I knew this one. I had this one down. See, the thing is that if you don't get the soil continuously moist enough, what can happen is you develop like a crust of wet soil on top, but the soil below is starting to become that really dry, dusty soil again. And what happens, this happened to my mom, she's like, I don't know what's happening with my tomato plant, it was doing so good, I water it every day. And then like I went and I started digging in her soil on the edges, and like, yeah, the first inch was wet, but the next like 6 inches completely dry. And what happens is this can be like really deceptive, because what had happened for her was there was a crust forming on top, so she couldn't tell that she wasn't watering enough. So once you get your soil like nice and moist from the beginning, you want to water it until you see water coming out the bottom, because like pick trays. Oh, I guess that would be a tip too. Yeah, avoid that mistake. Make sure you have trays that actually have like holes in them, because otherwise you're going to grow moldy plants, and plants actually don't grow in mold, so don't do that. So you want to water these until they actually have some water coming out below them, so that, you know, you don't end up with like a bunch of plants trying to grow in dusty soil. It doesn't work very well. So you just need to really water it once a day, which is what I just did. I just put like a little friendly, I like the little task app in Google, and I just have like a reoccurring reminder that like every day come out at a certain time. And what I also do, you see my seedlings are right there, but what I'll do is after I'm done with this is I refill this watering can, and then I set it right next to my door so that when I come to let my dogs out, I see my task reminder, and then boom, my full watering can is sitting there, and I just walk across while the dogs go pee-pee, and then I make sure my seedlings stay watered every day. That's my way of doing it. Again, many right ways to do this. This is just what works for me. Okay, we're like on tip mistake 5, I think, or 6 or 7, who knows. At this point, like, we'll just go with it. Maybe I put a number here to help us keep track. But the next thing that I've done over the years is I've either given my seedlings too much sun or too little sun. But really I need to be like Goldilocks, even though my hair is brown, and get it just right. In the past, I would just shove my seedlings outside, like as if they were full grown plants and it was the right time of year. And then they got way too much sun and they died because they couldn't handle the sun, especially when you're talking about fall starting seeds. Like, the sun's too intense. Even for your warm weather crops, it's too intense for those itty bitty baby seedlings. Because in the wild, tomatoes and peppers, they would be growing at the edges of like forests or thickets. So the first plant would actually get shaded by larger plants. That's how I remember it. So then I was like, haha, I shall put them in a shadier location. So I put them in my food forest. I was like, just like the forest in the wild, it will give them shade. And that worked for a small amount of time when all these bananas and mulberries and everything was teeny tiny. But then I just shaded them completely out. And then they were getting no sun. So they would pop up, because you can get a seedling with like no sun to pop up at first, because they're just using all the energy from in the seed to get going. But then after that, they're just like, where's my sun? So you need to give them sun. So it's taken me through a lot of the years trial and error to figure out what's too much sun, what's too little sun. But I've now figured out that having a place on my patio where I can keep an eye on it, because that was my other problem, I would shove it over here and then I'd forget to water it, because that's a bonus tip, right? Like, make sure your seedlings are somewhere where you actually walk regularly so that you take care of them and do all the things you're supposed to do with them. But it took me a minute to figure out, like, you just need like a couple hours of sun, not a ton. If you can do things like have dappled sun, like have it come through some sort of tree light, amazing. They will love that. And what you want to look for is them starting to get leggy. You want to look for them like reaching towards a direction. If you see any of that, just even a little bit, boom, move them, rotate them, something, because you got not enough sun and they're reaching towards it, or you got uneven sun and they're heading a direction, which all these things I've done, all of them. But one of the best ways you can keep an eye on it is keeping these in a location that you walk every day. So if you have dogs, it's along your dog path, but maybe if they're big dogs, be careful so they don't run over them, which is why mine are on my western side, which everyone will tell you. You want to have your seedlings in like morning sun, not evening sun, but sometimes you gotta do what you gotta do. Because my morning sun, Shiloh will trample those seedlings in that location. So find a location where you're gonna get like a couple hours of direct sunlight. You don't need a crazy amount, especially in fall, because our sun's really intense at this time of year, but you don't shade them too much. That's why I picked this location, which might seem like, Jacqueline, it's all in shade. Yes, right now it is. But once we hit the evening, the sun comes from that way, and then based on where all this stuff is, this is gonna get about 2 hours of sun from like 4:30 to 6:30, which is why I'm gonna need to keep watching this, because as we move closer to winter, sun's gonna shift and this spot's not gonna work for other seasons. But for right now, it works, so we're gonna go with it. Now we need to talk about a tip that's really key for us Floridians in the fall. And I've been talking about it lately, and this is one of the mistakes I've made over and over again, is I've moved my plants out into the elements, unprotected from our smashing rains. Now, one of the biggest mistakes that has killed the absolute most seedlings, whether they were vegetable seedlings, whether they were tropical plant seedlings, or they were even native plant seedlings, because every year, right at the end of August or the beginning of September, we get like a monsoon deluge that lasts all day, and every part of the state goes through this. And everyone, especially Central South Florida, gets 5, 6, 9 inches of rain in about 36 hours. And no seedling can handle that. And the problem is at that time of year, the August and September time of year, our forecast moves all over the map. We go from having these like regular summer storms to all of a sudden it'll show no rain for 5 days. But then you'll check back 12 hours later and then it says like, oh no, 30% chance of rain for the next 6 days. But then you check back later and then all of a sudden like there's gonna be rain, but not tomorrow, maybe 2 days from now. And then whatever day it's gonna rain and it's like, yeah, it's definitely gonna rain. That's it. That's that moment. It's gone 4 or 5 days, no rain in your area. And then a storm comes and it's insanely, yes. And everyone loses their seedlings. You can check back on videos throughout my years of doing this. Every year I have a fall video that's basically me saying I have to restart seedlings and a whole bunch of comments of fellow Wild Floridian community members saying, me too, I thought it was just me. So I give you this warning now so that you don't have to go through this pain, because we've gone through it year after year after year. So figuring out a protected area where you can either break up the rain, but even that is sometimes not enough. I've had it under my mulberry trees when they did get enough sun before the mulberries got too big. They have still been drowned out. I've had it where I put it even under the eaves of my house because I knew a big storm was coming. And even that, because the rain was slanting, it killed them too. It is so much rain that it really, really, really will destroy so many seedlings and so many young plant starts, because it's overwhelming how much water is going to come in a very short amount of time. Which is why this year I am working on creating multiple types of ways of starting my seedlings in protected areas. So I've got something on my patio going. I'm going to be starting something that does like a more of like an inside thing. So I've got multiple waves of stuff so that when this comes, because it's going to come, it always comes, I've still got my start so I can get my tomatoes, I can get my peppers, I can get my eggplants in the short time period in the fall, and then get them, get them going. Mistake number 8 is being a defeatist. I've had it where work was so busy, we get a monsoon rain, the whole thing gets smashed, and then I'm just like, well, that's it. I missed it. I missed fall. I'm done. I'm just quitting on this. I guess I'll go buy starts. But honestly, you need to have that resilient mindset, because what I've learned over the years is like, you just need to start again. So now what I'm in the habit of doing is I buy a packet of seed or 2 packets of seeds. So I always have seeds on hand so that when the tomato doesn't pop up, or the pepper or the lettuce or the onion or whatever, I've got more on hand so I can just quickly turn around, restart a tray. Even though I might not be on the early end of starting tomatoes in August, like you can still grow them in August and September, and like in South Central and South Florida, like you can still push into like October. It's not a big deal. It's worth just like taking a risk and starting again, because the weather is a little bit different every year. I can tell you it's gonna be a certain way, but some years are a little warmer, some years are a little bit colder. Certain stuff's gonna work, some other stuff's not gonna work. But if you just have this like resiliency mindset, just like, yep, I got it, I planted some stuff, it didn't come up, or half of it came up, just start again. Just start again. Just dump out that soil, re-wet it, put new seeds in, and move on. Because what makes you the most successful is by being persistent and resilient. You just keep on. You say, I will, until. So I always, no matter what type of seed I'm planning on starting, I always make sure I'm gonna have enough for backup. And every type of seed is a little bit different. Some, like onions, come with a bajillion seeds, so I only need 1 packet and still will have way more than I need to just restart everything. But oftentimes with tomatoes and peppers, like I just have enough to start what I'm gonna start, so I end up getting like a couple packets so that I always have some backup on hand just in case stuff isn't working. And that also leads to the kind of another thing is like, I'll sit here and I'll know I need 6 tomatoes, but like I'll plant 8, because like you always gonna have seeds that just like don't work right. But what I want you to get in your mindset is, I will until. If I have to restart, it's okay. It's okay. Not a bad gardener. It's challenging time of year to get seed started. You got heat, you got humidity. I am felting. I'm so sweaty right now. It's hard. There's tons of bugs. They all want to eat your plants. It's gonna be okay. Just keep restarting. Whoo, it's hot out. And if you're ready to go start seeds and you're like, but Jacqueline, I don't know what varieties to start. I don't even know where to buy them from. Go check out this video where I just went through like 20 plus varieties that I'm starting this fall, whether I'm starting them in early fall or late fall, and I tell you which company I'm buying them from, so that if you need inspiration on things to just like get your fall garden going, or winter or spring, you can get inspired by my list and, you know, cheat sheet. Okay, I'll see you soon. Bye.